Hello everybody, it's Thomas here. I'm back with another video. Today we're going to be looking at JWTs and what they are, how they work, and why I think a lot of people have a lot of misunderstandings about them. So let's jump into it. What is a JWT? Let's jump over to the computer now. A JWT, otherwise known as a JSON web token, is essentially a structured bit of data in JSON. So essentially it's got three main parts that you need to know about. It's got what's known as the header, that's this bit, followed by the body, followed by the signature. If we look over here on jwt.io, great website, they can decode, they can also encode, but it's the kind of same thing. They can decode and encode JWTs. So you can see here they've highlighted the three sections for us separately. They've got some specific points. So in their header, you're supposed to include the algorithm and the type of JWT that it is. That's pretty simple. That makes kind of a bit of sense. In the payload, you can include whatever you like, really. There are some standards on what you should include, such as an expiry time, a issued at time, a sub, which is who it's for, like the whom it references, the subject. But realistically, you can put whatever you like. And then the secret key, which is the final third part, just essentially is a cryptographic hash of the other two parts combined. This way, you can validate that the data inside your JWT has not been edited, which is important. We'll get to that. So why are JWTs a bit revolutionary in the industry? So I've got my diagram here. I did film this video earlier, but there was some background noise, but now I've got my new mic. I'm hoping it's going to have cleared up. So as you can see in my diagram that I made earlier, the client makes an auth request, say with the username, password, username might be Thomas, password might be Thomas, whatever it is, to the server. The server used to generate a session. This is session-based authentication. So the server generates a session, sends it back. That session is stored both on the server and on the client. They have to match. So it's basically like a generated random ID that matches. Essentially, they generate one on the server, one on the client. They send it back. When you send it to request to the server, you send that with it, and it knows who you are. That can expire. It's normally stored in memory on the server. It requires a lot of memory and stuff like that. But if the server reboots or whatever, it's invalid. However, the problem comes these days with microservices and distributed server technology, all this sort of modern buzzwordy tech that we do, where we've got multiple microservices or Docker containers that all need to validate that you are who you say you are. Because when the client talks to the server that it got the token from, that's fine. But if it wants to talk to a different server, that server doesn't know whether that token is valid. It can either make a request to the previous server, or it can just say it's invalid, or say you could store it in an external database, but then you're requiring some lookup on that auth query, which if a lot of people are spamming you about invalid auth, that's going to take ages. Do you know what I mean? You can waste a lot of time and money and computation over there. So JWTs have been pretty revolutionary in this. They use public-private key pairs. Let's jump over here. So you've got your client that requests the server for auth, and then I've broken out that they get the algorithm. They get a JWT with the algorithm and whatever. So the algorithm is whatever the algorithm you use to sign in. Blah blah blah. That's not important. So we're in this JWT, we're returning back the ID Thomas. So the JWT is returned back from the server. That can be validated simply by using a public key. Anybody with the private key can sign the JWT and create one. Anybody with the public key can validate it. They normally last for around a sort of an hour or so. Most people make them live an hour. Apple have some requirements for JWTs they use for services. I've discovered that they want between like 5 to 20 minutes. Anything longer and they'll call it invalid. But realistically, they could last for as long as you like. We'll get why you don't want to set them too long in a minute. But yeah, so the client then can send that request to the server with the JWT, and the server can validate that using a public key that it can hold that doesn't violate any security. It just validates that that public key is valid. So that could come down here to the user images. Oh, something's buzzing. My phone is buzzing. Oops. Anyway, so if you go down to this user images endpoint, the JWT gets sent there and it can validate that the signature is correct. All the signature means is the data in the JWT has not been edited. let's talk about some issues. Very first issue is people think the data in the JWT is encrypted. It's not. Anybody could stick it in JSON web token.io, JWT.io, and see what the data is in the token. The data in the token should always be treated as stale, e.g. you shouldn't have dynamic live data in it, unless you're doing some weird case, I guess. But anybody could make a request with a previous piece of data. So what you should do is store reference to the user object, not the current user object. Say you wanted to store what services the user had access to. So say they wanted to have access to, I don't know, an image system and a file system, but you wanted to revoke the access to the image system. If you put that in the JWT, you wouldn't be able to do that. But if you made it a reference to the database, once you validated the user, you could just look them up in the database, which is pretty simple. The recommended period is about an hour for them to live. They have a TTL of about an hour normally. Some people do them longer, some people do them shorter. The way to get around solving this is to have something called a refresh token. This is essentially a token returned when the user makes the JWT the first time that allows them to send the JWT and get a new JWT. These are normally stored on the authentication system. They might be JWTs themselves, but they're commonly not. They're commonly other complicated. They're sort of session-based, but they're long-lived sessions in the database that are only queried every hour, and they can go back to the authentication system as opposed to going to some random service. Do you know what I mean? They go to a known location. A key problem that you have with a JWT is the fact that they can't expire early. It's quite a big problem because if somebody steals a valid token, say from Session Hijack or something like that, then there is no way to invalidate that token while it's still valid. But overall, I think I've kind of explained JWTs quite well to you. I hope you've understood this. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I want to cover. I don't think there's anything else I want to cover, so I hope you've enjoyed this. No doubt when I finish this video, I'll be like, there was that point that I forgot to mention because I did that earlier and I had them and I didn't write them down. But anyway, if you have enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button and it's making a massive difference. I'm on my way to 1,000. I'm nearly there. I say I'm nearly there. I'm at like 600. But I'm 600 closer than I was at some point in time. But anyway, thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one.